Keeping it real. I'm your host, Reverend Al Sharpton, and we are back, and we're going to the phones in a minute, but let me bring on, as we do every Monday, to add some substance to this discussion, Dr. Earl Afari Hutchinson, and of course, Dr. Hutchinson, nationally known author and political analyst and activist, also hosts a nationally broadcast political affairs radio talk show on Pacifica and KTYM Radio in Los Angeles. How you doing, Dr. Hutchinson?
Well, very good. But, Reverend Al, I know that you are in eighth heaven, you and Fatim, with a great victory of the New York Giants. I know you're on cloud nine.
Well, Fatim is on cloud nine. I was happy to see him. I know some of the Giants. I thought it was good. And I think it is something that is excellent.
Hats off.
I got to give hats off to them, no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you. Let me get into something that I thought was interesting that you wrote on Saturday. Mitt Romney, Willard, as I call him, which is his first name, won the Nevada primary. Nevada caucus, I should say, and. You raised the question of where are Romney's blacks. Now, the reason I think it's a legitimate question, and I want you to elaborate, is that this is probably the first season and generation of Republicans I've seen that do not even have blacks identified in their campaign. I mean, even George Bush, we knew his blacks, Condoleezza Rice, we knew Colin Powell. I mean, when you think about it, you raise a very interesting point. These Republicans don't even have blacks that we can say this is the blacks they relate to.
Exactly. Well, you know what, and it's interesting, Reverend Al, in light of the Nevada caucus win, I watched very carefully and listened very closely to Mitt Romney's victory speech. And I was not so much interested in what he had to say. I mean, you could mail that in. I was more interested in who was in the audience. And I got to tell you, Reverend Al, it even drove it home even more, the point that, you're making, and certainly I tried to make, is how lily white, and I'm not talking about the can, I looked at the crowd, and see one black face. Now, it's always been standard, going all the way back to Richard Nixon, that you'd always have a few black faces here and there for effect and photo ops and so forth. And occasionally you'd get some endorsements from a black celebrity, a black entertainer, going all the way back to Sammy Davis Jr., Wilt Chamberlain with Nixon, and, Reagan had his blacks, Bush Sr. had his blacks. They all did, certainly Bush Jr. But what I was struck by, that these guys, and especially Romney, I'm going to really zero on him, how lily white not only his campaign is, his staff is, those that are doing a lot of the prep work for him. As a matter of fact, so white that, and certainly he's no liberal by any standard, former Oklahoma congressperson J.C. Watts, even he called Romney out some months ago and said, essentially, where are the blacks on your staff? And he's a black conservative. So when I looked at the crowd, those that were cheering wildly for Romney at his victory speech after his win in Nevada, I just wanted to know if there are no African Americans whatsoever, and we're talking about African Americans now. If there are none whatsoever in the crowd, none on his staff, none that have endorsed him that I know of, Reverend Al, maybe you know of one, but I don't know of any of them that have endorsed him yet. I mean, some have endorsed Gingrich. Even Ron Paul's got a couple of African Americans that have spoken up for him. Santorin's got a couple. But Romney, not one. I think it's odd that at this stage of the campaign, and as we get into the political season, where you have the leading GOP contender for the nomination, where you don't have one visible African American that has endorsed, or at least in the crowd scenes, where you see some African Americans standing behind him when he's giving his presentations, his speeches on the campaign trail, shaking hands. Not one. I mean, that's almost unprecedented.
Right.
That's a hat trick. How do you pull that one off?
No, it's amazing, and you're right. And I think it goes to show the climate that we're in. And when President Obama won the election, it went immediately into the GOP went through this process and ended up with Michael Steele as the chairman, like they were going to show that they were inclusive. And now they've gone all the way the other way, despite the fact they picked up 61 seats in 2010 under Steele's chairmanship and raised all this money. They dumped him. Now you don't see a visible black or even a not so visible black in the Romney camp.